I sat alone in the lobby of the Seabright Palms Hotel during the New Year's vacation I had paid for in full, watching my children link arms as they led the whole family to a lavish dinner, leaving me isolated on a cold chair. I heard them whisper clearly, "Mom is nothing but a burden." My throat tightened, my eyes blurred, and I quietly opened the folder I had prepared. When the bill for thousands of dollars was shifted directly into their names, those arrogant faces froze. And that was only the beginning of my fight for justice. My name is Evelyn Mercer, 66 years old, living in Tampa, Florida. I had worked as a freelance accountant for many years, used to dealing with numbers, invoices, paperwork, and all the little details other people usually overlooked. Since my husband Thomas passed away 4 years ago, life had become unbearably quiet. The spacious home that once echoed with family laughter now only held the sound of the TV and the ticking of a wall clock. I still walked around the neighborhood, still baked almond cookies for church on weekends, but there was always an emptiness in my heart. Maybe that's why Aaron's phone call, my eldest son, 3 weeks before the trip, moved me to tears. His voice was cheerful. "Mom, we're planning a New Year's getaway for the whole family. Aaron, Paige, Caleb, Lila, the kids, everyone. You'll come, right?" My throat caught. All I could whisper was, I really want to." Aaron went on describing the Seabright Palms Hotel, a well-known beachfront resort with a saltwater pool, a luxury spa, and a wide seafood menu. He said the trip would be a chance to reconnect, like the old days, when Thomas was still alive and we used to have picnics at Clearwater Beach. My heart leapt. It had been so long since the whole family was together, not a strained dinner or a frosty Christmas, but a real vacation. But then, in a tone I knew too well, Aaron added a small detail. "Oh, Mom, we figured it'd be easier if you booked the rooms under your name. Everyone will just pay you back afterward." Just a formality. I froze. For years I had been the one stuck holding the bag, paying for summer camp flights for the grandkids, booking hotels for family reunions. The money rarely came back as promised, if it came back at all. I bit my lip, but my heart softened. I wanted to believe this time would be different. I wanted to believe this trip would be the chance for me to be recognized as part of the family, not just the quiet shadow trailing behind them. So I called Seabright Palms. The friendly receptionist read off the packages. 5 oceanfront suites, 7 nights from January 2nd to January 9th, including 3 buffet meals per day, spa and pool access, plus tickets to a seaside jazz night. The total cost stunned me, $4,200. I drew in a deep breath. I checked my bank account. Just over $800 in savings scraped together from bookkeeping jobs for a few small shops and selling almond cookies every Sunday at the church fair. The rest would have to go on my credit card. The hotel required 50% down immediately, $2,100. That night I tossed and turned, staring at the wedding ring I had kept in a jewelry box for 41 years. I remembered Thomas sliding it onto my finger under the church arch, his trembling voice promising to stay with me for life. The next morning I brought it to Mr. Feldman's jewelry store, a Jewish man who'd known me since my youth. He looked at me with sympathy. "Evelyn, I can only give you $800. The market these days." I swallowed back tears and nodded. I didn't need more. I only needed enough for the deposit to hold the reservation. When I hit the payment button, my heart felt both heavy and light. Heavy for losing something priceless. Light because I believed I was doing the right thing for my family. I told myself, at least this time, they'll see I'm more than just the cook, the babysitter, the cleaner. I am at the center of this vacation. In the days after, I worked harder than ever. Took on extra bookkeeping contracts, cut every expense, walked instead of calling an Uber, ate peanut butter sandwiches instead of proper dinners. I scraped together enough to cover the balance. I printed every confirmation and slipped them into a blue folder, carefully labeled. That was the accountant in me, and also the way I tamed my worries. I had no idea that the same day Aaron called me, a WhatsApp group called No Drama Getaway had been created. In it were Aaron, Paige, Caleb, Lila, and messages that, later, would crush me. But at the time, I just sat smiling in my empty kitchen, picturing the whole family at the beach, waves mingling with the kids' laughter. I thought maybe Thomas, from heaven, would be smiling too. As departure drew near, I packed carefully. A few summer dresses, a light cardigan, my old but comfortable sandals. I even prepared a tin of almond cookies, planning to give them as gifts. The night before, I set my suitcase by the bed, looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "Thomas, please let this time be the one where our family is truly happy." Early the next morning, I went to the airport with everyone. They were cheerful, busy with their phones and designer luggage. Only Madison, my 17-year-old granddaughter, turned to ask softly, "Grandma, are you tired? Want me to pull your suitcase?" I smiled, my eyes stinging. In that moment, I felt that at least one person truly saw me not as a burden, but as a person. 3 days after I sent the deposit, the confirmation email from Seabright Palms arrived. On the screen, reservation confirmed. 5 oceanfront suites, January 29, 2025. I read it over and over, my heart pounding like I'd just signed a major contract. To me, it wasn't just a vacation. It was proof I had a place in the family. I printed all the documents, organized them into plastic sleeves, color-coded tabs, blue for rooms, yellow for meals, red for spa. The accountant's habit had never left me, and now it gave me comfort. I pictured my son and daughter-in-law nodding at my careful prep. Mom's always overthinking, but thanks to her, everything runs smoothly. That thought warmed me. The following days, I lived frugally to the point of austerity. I turned off the heat earlier, wearing 2 sweaters. I walked to the market through the biting December wind instead of calling Uber. Dinner was only vegetable soup and dry bread, meat only on Sundays. I told no one, complained to no one. I treated it as the necessary sacrifice, proof of my love. One night, while sorting receipts, I got a call from Caleb, my youngest. He said, "Mom, I heard Aaron said you booked the hotel. What's it like?" I laughed. "Beautiful, son. Saltwater pool, live jazz by the beach, plenty of room for the kids to run." Caleb said, "Oh, and never mention money." I hesitated. "About the deposit, how are you planning to handle it?" Silence then. "I'm busy in a meeting, Mom. Later, okay?" I set the phone down. Numb. I tried to convince myself they really were busy, not avoiding me. But inside, a small crack opened. On December 30th, Aaron texted, "Mom, we're so excited. Paige is packed. The kids are counting days. Don't forget your medicine. Don't worry, everything will be wonderful." I read it and wanted to cry. Part of me still longed to believe my son truly wanted the best for me. His text was like a Band-Aid over that crack, but underneath, unease still bled. On New Year's Eve, I pulled my suitcase out, folded dresses neatly. The pale blue dress Thomas once said made me look 10 years younger, the hand-knit cardigan from my mother, the sandals that had traveled so many places with me. I even added my mother's old perfume, bottle, light, and breezy like ocean air. I wanted to show up not as some unwanted old woman, but as a woman with dignity. On January 2nd, Aaron drove up to pick me up. I stepped out with a bright smile, suitcase in hand, but as soon as I got in the car, I felt the difference. Paige sat in the passenger seat, eyes glued to her phone, muttering a quick hi without looking up. The kids in the back tapped on their games, not lifting their heads. Aaron asked a few polite questions, his tone distracted. I tried to chat, asked about work, school, but the answers were short. Paige even burst out laughing at a text, not bothering to explain. I asked, "What's so funny, Paige?" She replied curtly, Just friends, Mom, you wouldn't get it. I turned to the window, watching the trees slide past. My excitement dimmed, replaced by a familiar ache of being left out. The 3-hour drive felt heavy, but when the sea-bright palms came into view, my heart fluttered again. The white facade, green palms swaying, the fountain splashing high. I breathed deep, hoping the scenery would wash away my unease. We entered the lobby. I approached the desk proudly. I booked 5 suites under Evelyn Mercer. The receptionist smiled. Yes, all ready. Here are the room keys, all on the 3rd floor, ocean view. I turned to hand them out, but behind me, my children huddled, whispering. I caught Caleb mutter, 5 suites? A bit much. Aaron replied. Let Mom handle it, we'll figure it out later. I handed out the keys, hoping for a smile or a thank you. But they just took them, like it was nothing. Only Madison leaned close and whispered, Thank you, Grandma, I'm so excited. I squeezed her hand, warmed. As I stepped away, Aaron said, Mom, we'll head up first. You settle later. No one waited. No one asked if I needed help. I stood frozen, watching them disappear into the elevator, leaving me alone in the fancy lobby. Humiliation burned, my throat tight. I bit my lip until it bled, my hands shaking on the folder. For a moment I wanted to run to my room, to cry. But instead, I inhaled, lifted my chin. I remembered the addendum I'd had the hotel prepare, all expenses in my name, with full power to change. I slipped the folder into my bag, whispering to myself, No, Evelyn, don't cry. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning. That night, I sat by the window, looking at the moonlit sea. I thought of Thomas, of the ring I had sold. I whispered, I've done everything to hold this family. But if they don't see me as family, then they'll see I'm not their burden. In silence, I opened my notebook, wrote every line, deposit, balance, expenses, dates. Next to it, one small note, deposit money, deposit trust. I knew that trust was crumbling, and if it collapsed, I wouldn't collapse with it. I would stand. And this time, I would set the rules. The next morning, I woke early. Florida sunlight streamed through the curtains, painting pale stripes on the polished floor. The ocean hummed outside. I brewed coffee from the little machine, inhaled the smell, and steadied myself. Last night I had finished the ledger, deposit, debts, projected costs. This wasn't just a vacation, it was a test of kinship, bought with a wedding ring and months of sacrifice. Around 8 a.m., I heard kids' voices in the hall. I opened the door to see Madison knocking lightly, her face bright. Grandma, ready? Everyone's going to breakfast downstairs. I smiled. I'm ready, sweetheart. Let's go. We rode the elevator. The restaurant gleamed with sunlight, windows looking out on the pool. White-clothed tables held hot coffee and fresh orange juice. I spotted Aaron, Paige, Caleb, and Lila at a large table near the window, laughing, chatting. They barely noticed me approach. When Madison and I sat down, Paige glanced up, then went back to her phone. Aaron nodded politely. Oh, Mom, you came down. Sit. His words sounded more like formality than welcome. I sat down and quietly poured myself some coffee. No one asked if I'd slept well. No one mentioned what it had taken for me to prepare for this trip. Their silence wasn't random, it was deliberate indifference. Lila turned to Caleb, half whispering, half making sure I could hear. Yesterday at the spa, they mentioned a new treatment package this morning. We should book it before it fills up. Caleb nodded. Yeah, I'll call the front desk in a bit. As for the kids, there's a play area Grandma can watch them. The words shot straight into my ears. Grandma can watch them. I bit my lip and stirred my coffee in silence. It's not that I mind caring for my grandkids, I love them dearly, but the way Caleb said it, as if my only value was being a free babysitter, tightened my chest. I tried to chime in. If you all want to go to the spa, I could come too. Try a treatment. Paige gave a small laugh, her glance skimming me with a hint of mockery. "Mom, those packages are a little modern, not really suited for older folks." Sitting beside me, Madison gently squeezed my hand under the table. I could feel her discomfort, as if she too sensed the unfairness, but didn't dare speak up. All through breakfast, the conversation circled around plans I was completely excluded from: spa schedules, water sports tours, a fancy dinner they'd already discussed. Now and then Aaron tossed me a perfunctory question to keep up appearances. I sat there listening to the distant surf and felt my heart icing over like a thin sheet of frost. When breakfast ended, everyone stood and left ahead of me without waiting. I dabbed the corner of my eye with the napkin and took a deep breath. I didn't want Madison to see me fragile. That noon, I returned to my room. Outside the window, the beach blazed with sun. Bright umbrellas crowded the sand, and children laughed as they built sandcastles. Looking down, I saw my own family playing together, not giving me a second thought. The sight twisted into me like a knife. I flipped open my laptop and pulled up the hotel confirmation email. Every document bore my name, Evelyn Mercer. I turned through each page of the contract, reading every clause carefully. I marked in red the line, "Sole account holder has authority to modify, cancel, or transfer." My chest loosened. I wasn't an invisible old mother. I had authority. I had proof. That afternoon, Madison knocked on my door, phone in hand. She looked at me and whispered, "Grandma, I think you should see this." On the screen was a WhatsApp group named No Drama Getaway. One line after another appeared. "Mom will cover everything, no need to discuss. Just let her think she's important. As long as she pays, we can enjoy ourselves." My vision blurred. Those words jabbed at every breath. I sat on the bed, my hands trembling. Madison gripped my hand tightly. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I didn't want to hurt you, but I think you have a right to know." I nodded, keeping my voice steady. "Thank you, Madison. At least I still have you." That evening, the whole family went out to dinner. I wasn't invited, and no one mentioned it. I stayed in, ordered room service, a salad, and a glass of red wine. When the server brought the tray, I sat on the balcony, watching the streetlights cast a warm glow on the damp sand. The ocean breeze threaded through my hair, briny and sharp. I sipped the wine, shame and resolve rising together. "Evelyn, no more tears," I told myself. "They see you as a burden, but they'll learn you're not a walking wallet. You still have strength, and this time you will use it." The next day, while the family headed to the pool, I walked alone to the front desk. The marble counter gleamed. Behind it, a young clerk smiled. "Good morning, Mrs. Mercer. How can I assist?" "You?" I set down my folder, speaking evenly. "I'd like to add a security note. From now on, any changes to the reservation require my physical presence and identification." She nodded. "Absolutely. We'll place that note in the system right away." I signed, my hand steadier than it had been in years. For the first time in a long time, betrayal didn't make me shake. I knew they were quietly plotting to edge me out, but I had started drawing my own lines of defense. That afternoon, when I returned to the pool, Paige beamed and lifted her phone to snap a group photo. I smiled from the side, not stepping into the frame. They probably thought I was silently enduring. They didn't know that every step I took was already calculated. Inside, I still heard the whisper repeating, "Mom is nothing but a burden." This time, instead of making me cry, it fueled my resolve. I didn't need their apologies right away. I didn't need their invitations or their forced kindness. I needed them to bear the consequences of what they were secretly doing, and I was ready. That night, back in the room, Madison sat beside me, eyes rimmed red. She held out her phone, her hands shaking as if she feared she was betraying her parents. I gently laid my hand over hers to calm her. "It's okay, sweetheart. If you think I should know, Then let me carry this hurt. You just need to be honest with yourself. I took the phone and scrolled. The WhatsApp group No Drama Getaway was clear, its icon a colorful cocktail, Page's choice, probably. I read each line as if someone were pouring salt into an open wound. Let Evelyn put it under her name, easier for us, we won't be tied to it. She'll pay up front. Don't worry. At the end, there'll be some issue, so we can avoid the bill. Split off and do our own thing. No hassle. She's old anyway, just let her stay in the room and watch TV. Reminder, don't let her know about this group. Keep flattering her. Easy enough. There were laughing emojis with tears and even a gif mocking me fussing with papers at the front desk. I stared, gripping the phone until my knuckles went white. Each word, each image stabbed straight into my heart. Madison murmured, I tried to tell them it wasn't fair, that you'd already paid everything. They told me I'm too young, that I don't understand adult matters. I stayed quiet, a long pause, with only the sound of the surf outside the window. Finally, I nodded, my voice oddly calm. You did the right thing. I know everything now, and I won't cry anymore, but promise me, keep this to yourself. Don't let them suspect. She nodded hard, tears spilling over. I wiped them away and held her close. I understood clearly. In that big family, only Madison truly stood by me. After Madison left, I sat alone and opened my accounting notebook. I wrote down what I had just seen, every sentence, every emoji. I stuck on a red sticky note labeled, Evidence No. 1. Inside me. The pain hardened into a strange clarity. In the past, I avoided conflict, chose silence to keep the peace. But now, seeing the cold calculations of my son and daughter-in-law, I knew I could not keep yielding. That night, I still went down to the restaurant and sat through the family dinner as if I knew nothing. I smiled when Aaron raised a toast, when Paige ordered extra appetizers and left them half-eaten, when Caleb boasted about a snorkeling tour for tomorrow. I quietly ate spoonfuls of hot clam chowder to mask the chill inside. But my eyes recorded everything, the way Lila curled her lip at older ladies at the spa, the way Aaron glanced past me like I was a shadow, the way Paige stressed the word free when talking about the vacation. Every detail I filed away, like an accountant logging an unpaid debt. Back in my room, I screenshotted the entire chat on Madison's phone and saved it to the small USB drive I always carry. I knew this. In family battles, words can be denied, but evidence cannot. That night I sat by the window, staring at the black ocean. The moon was dim behind clouds, the wind snapping the curtains. I thought back over the years. The times I paid toward Aaron's house and he promised to pay me back over time. The times I gave Caleb money to start a business and got nothing but silence. I told myself it was a mother's duty, a way to keep my children close, but to them, I was only a walking wallet. Grief surged up, but right behind it came steel. I whispered, "No, Evelyn. Enough. Motherhood isn't for exploitation. If they see you as a burden, let them learn what it means to carry consequences." The next morning, I woke earlier than everyone. I called the bank and spoke with a risk department agent named Dana. I laid out the details. I was the only person paying for the entire vacation, but the family showed signs they might dispute charges after using the services. Dana listened patiently, then advised, "Mrs. Mercer, I'll flag your account. If a dispute is filed, we'll require the other party to prove their claim, and you already have documents and evidence. Please don't worry." I felt lighter, as if I'd built another layer of wall around myself. In the afternoon, I met the hotel manager, a Spanish gentleman named Victor Alvarez. I smiled, but my eyes were firm. "I'm the account holder for all rooms. I want it clearly noted in your system that no one but me may modify, cancel, or transfer." Victor nodded after reviewing my file. He signed a short addendum and stamped it with the hotel seal. I left his office with a lighter step. The pieces were clicking into place, On my way back, I saw the family at the pool. Paige, in a bright red bikini, laughed loudly. Aaron and Caleb held cocktails like VIP guests on a free vacation. I stood still, watching, and a complicated feeling rose in me, part pain, part disdain. That night, while the family went out again, Madison stayed with me. She showed more screenshots, including a message from Lila. "Remember to do the chargeback on the last day. Just say the services weren't as advertised. That way we don't pay a dime." I gave a cold smile. For the first time in months, my smile didn't tremble. I told Madison, "Sweetheart, let me handle it. They think I'm old, naive, easy to lead around. But they're about to learn I didn't do accounting all my life just to get duped now." I closed the phone, slipped the folder into my purse, and told myself, the game has flipped. And this time, I'm the one keeping the rules. The next evening, the family chose the hotel's Italian restaurant. I wore my pale blue dress, old but crisply pressed, and a light cream cardigan. In the mirror, I saw a tired face, but I forced a smile. I knew tonight would be a test of my endurance and of the backbone I was quietly putting in place. The restaurant glowed with warm lights, white tablecloths, and small vases of white roses on each table. The air carried the scent of baked pizza and red wine. I walked behind the group, slow and quiet, as if I were just an add-on to this vacation. We gathered around a long table. As soon as the server handed out menus, Caleb ordered a premium Italian red, a bottle I knew would cost at least $200. Paige hurried to add 2 appetizers just to taste. I waited my turn, then asked for a simple minestrone soup. I didn't want to be seen as indulging. While we waited, little Ben, Caleb's 8-year-old, turned to me, eyes shining. "Grandma, can you help me build a sandcastle tomorrow?" I laughed and patted his head. "Of course, honey, we'll build a big castle together." But Lila cut in right away, her voice tinged with disdain. "Ben, Grandma's older, she can't stay out in the sun all morning. Let your parents hire a coach for you." I froze at that. I looked at Ben and saw his eyes fall. I quickly added, gentle but firm, "It's okay. I can do it. You and I already made a promise, remember?" Ben smiled again, but I caught the annoyed glance from Lila and Paige. Dinner went on, everyone excitedly discussing tours, add-on services, and wine tastings. I stayed quiet, eating while I observed. I noticed how Aaron frowned when the server brought a preliminary check, then quickly slid it toward me as if it were automatically my responsibility. I nodded and took it, but a sharp pain pricked inside me. On the way out of the restaurant, Aaron suddenly held out his hand. "Mom, let me hold your papers and room keys so you don't have to carry everything." I stopped and smiled. "Did you forget? I've worked with paperwork my whole life. I only feel secure when I keep what's important." My tone was light, but my eyes told Aaron I wasn't giving in. As the group stepped into the elevator, I caught Paige curling her lip, whispering something into Lila's ear that made them both snicker. I turned away and kept silent. But inside, a small spark was catching fire. Back in my room, I sat at the desk and pulled out the file folder. I started reorganizing every receipt in chronological order: room deposit, dining costs, incidental charges. I used color sticky notes to sort them: yellow for restaurants, blue for activities, red for large items. I photographed each page with my phone and saved them in a dedicated folder. I wouldn't allow myself a single slip. A text from Madison came right then. "Grandma, the group chat is at it again. They're saying tomorrow they'll go to the front desk to switch the rooms into their names in case anything happens." I read it and felt my blood turn cold. I typed back to my granddaughter, "Keep taking screenshots for me. Don't let anyone suspect." Madison replied with a heart emoji. I sat still, staring at the black sea outside the window. I knew that if I did nothing, I'd lose everything, but I also knew that in this game, one wrong move and I'd be the senile old mother everyone laughed at. I couldn't let that happen. I grabbed my phone, opened my contacts, and stopped at the name Harold Benton, an old friend who used to be counsel for Thomas's construction company. I called. Harold's voice was old but steady. "Evelyn? How long has it been? What's going on?" I swallowed and gave him the short version. I had booked everything under my name, the secret group chat, messages plotting to dodge responsibility. Harold fell silent for a moment, then spoke firmly. "Evelyn, this is serious. It shows signs of financial abuse of an elder. I'll draft a sworn statement for you. Just sign and get it notarized. If things go south, we can take it to court." I closed my eyes, feeling like I'd just grabbed a lifeline. I whispered, "Thank you, Harold. I've been quiet too long. It's time I stood up." After the call, I felt my footing return. I was no longer just a mother trying to hold the family together. I was a woman who had to protect herself. I knew tonight's dinner was only the beginning. They were testing my patience and I was tempering my own counterplan. I gathered the folder, locked it carefully in my suitcase. I stood in front of the mirror and looked into my eyes. Wrinkles, crow's feet, silver hair, everything was right there, but so was something I'd lost for years, steel. I whispered to myself, "Evelyn, this road won't be easy, but you have nothing left to lose. They think you're a burden. Then show them how strong you are." Outside, the waves kept a steady beat, like music underscoring my resolve. That night I slept lightly, alert. I knew tomorrow the game would enter a new round, every action, and every word would have to be measured. And I was ready. The next morning, I woke very early. Dawn hadn't quite broken, but the waves were already murmuring beyond the glass, as if reminding me of the battle ahead. I sat at the desk, opened the folder, and reviewed every document again. Each receipt, each printout, every detail lined up neatly. I told myself, "Evelyn, there's no backing down today." I called the bank and reached the risk department. A young woman's voice came on. "Hello, this is Dana Whitaker. How can I help you, Mrs. Mercer?" Slowly, I explained from paying for the entire vacation to the secret family chat, plotting to duck responsibility. I stressed my fear that they'd try a chargeback after enjoying all the services. Dana didn't interrupt, just listened patiently. When I finished, she answered decisively. "Mrs. Mercer, you did the right thing saving all that evidence. I'll flag your account. If any disputes come in, we'll require the other party to provide strong proof, and you already have documents and screenshots. Keep everything organized, and we'll be on your side." I thanked her over and over. When I hung up, it felt like a heavy weight lifted off my shoulders. I'd built another wall to shield myself from their scheme. Right after that, I headed to the lobby to meet the hotel manager, Mr. Victor Alvarez. A middle-aged man in a neat gray suit, his gaze was firm but kind. I laid it out briefly. "Mr. Alvarez, I'm the only person listed and paying for all the rooms. I want to ensure that from now on, no one but me can modify or cancel them." Victor listened carefully, then nodded. "Do you have your documents?" I set the folder on the desk. He looked them over, then asked a staffer to bring in an addendum form. I read every line and saw my conditions spelled out. Only I could authorize changes. Anyone else would need my presence and ID. I signed. Victor stamped it and handed me a copy. "Mrs. Mercer, from now on our system locks all edits. Any changes require your confirmation. Please rest assured." I smiled, confidence rising. I wasn't just the dismissed old mother anymore. I was the legal owner of this entire vacation. Leaving his office, I walked across the gleaming marble corridor toward the pool. I saw my family lounging under the canopy, laughing loudly. Paige raised a pink cocktail. Caleb snapped a check-in photo. Aaron leaned toward Lila, saying something. They were all beaming, with no idea their little plan had just been blocked. I paused a few seconds, watching. A sorrow slid into me, the kind a mother feels when realizing how little her children value family. But alongside it came a cool determination. You can look down on me if you want, but I won't be fooled again. That afternoon, Harold called back. His voice was clear and firm. Evelyn, I've prepared the affidavit. Just sign and get it notarized, and I'll handle the rest. If this escalates, we'll have a legal file ready to protect you. I went to the hotel business center, met the notary, and signed right there. When the seal came down, it felt like I'd stamped a shield into place. That evening, the family gathered again at the Mexican restaurant on the property. I sat in the middle, listening to the chatter, but inside I was unusually calm. I knew I was a step ahead. During dinner, Aaron said suddenly, half joking, half serious, "Mom, tomorrow I'm thinking of asking the front desk if they can switch the rooms into my name so I can handle things. No need for you to fuss with all the details." I looked up and met his eyes. I smiled, but my voice was steady. "Son, everything's already clearly set. Only I can make changes. Don't worry about it anymore." Aaron flinched slightly. I saw Paige glance at him, then quickly change the subject to dessert. But in both their eyes, I caught irritation. They didn't know why yet, but they sensed their plan wasn't going smoothly. That night, back in my room, I opened the balcony and let the cool sea air drift in. Out on the water, little boat lights flickered. I knew I had locked the door they meant to slip through. I poured a cup of tea and wrote in my notebook, "Day 3 gate locked, evidence secured, bank alerted, manager signed, lawyer ready. Now we wait for their next move." I closed the notebook, feeling a rare calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting, I was prepared. Outside, the waves kept rolling, as if cheering me on. And inside, I heard the reminder, "Evelyn, you've built the wall, now let them run into it." The next morning, I put on a simple white blouse, tied my hair back, and took the folder to see Mr. Now. Victor Alvarez. We sat in his office, soft light coming through the glass. The faint smell of fresh coffee hung in the air. Victor placed a newly printed contract addendum with the hotel's red seal in front of me. He slid it over and explained, "Mrs. Mercer, per your request, we've updated the system. From now on, you alone have the right to cancel, lock, or transfer rooms. No one else, including family members, can interfere. You may also choose to lock any room keys at any time." I read each line, my heartbeat slow but strong. Everything I needed was there. I had the right to retain or deactivate room keys. I had the right to cancel unused nights early. I had the right to request security support if there was disruptive behavior. I signed and carefully slipped the copy into a plastic sleeve. Victor smiled. "I trust you'll use this wisely." I nodded. "Thank you, Victor. I only want fairness. Nothing more, nothing less." Back in my room, I sat at the table and looked out at the glittering blue sea. A mix of sadness, grim satisfaction, and resolve rose in me. I knew this control was the key to turning the tables. I opened my phone and saw a new message from Madison with screenshots. "Clear as day. This morning after breakfast, let's go to the front desk and switch. The rooms should be easy," wrote Lila. "Yeah, Mom's old. She doesn't know these procedures," Paige added. There were a few laughing with tears. Emojis. I gave a cold smile. They had no idea that while they joked, every door they meant to open had already been locked and the key sat quietly in my hand. I texted Madison, "Don't worry, let them try. I want to see how they react." At noon, the whole family headed to the Italian place. I went along, calm as if nothing had happened. I noticed Aaron glancing around, clearly waiting for the moment to slip to the front desk. Sure enough, after the meal, He pretended to go to the restroom and veered off. I looked at Madison and gave a small nod. She understood and quietly followed. 10 minutes later, Madison returned, sat beside me, and whispered, "They're arguing at the front desk. The staff told them only you can change the info." Paige's face is bright red, and Aaron is really irritated. I lifted my water glass, hiding a smile. Relief flooded my chest. For so many years, I had always been the one reacting, the one who had to accept. But now, they were the ones scrambling. In the afternoon, I decided to lightly tap my new authority. I went down to the desk and asked them to deactivate room key 901 for 2 hours for a system check. The front desk clerk noted it immediately and tapped a few keys. I stood there, calmly signed the confirmation, and watched. When I came back, the whole group was clustered in the hallway, fumbling with room keys that wouldn't work. Lila pounded on the door in anger. Paige was dialing non-stop. Aaron was breathing hard, trying to stay calm but clearly irritated. I walked by, feigning surprise. "What's going on, kids?" Paige glared. "Mom, the room's locked. We can't get in." I tilted my head, keeping my tone light. "Oh, really? Let me check with the front desk." Then I strolled on, leaving them there. Inside, I heard my own voice whisper, "This is only the warm-up." That evening, when everyone gathered in the lobby, I sat down on my own and opened my folder right in front of them. I didn't say a word, just calmly sorted papers, drew red lines, clipped them neatly. The table fell silent for a few seconds. Aaron finally spoke, forcing a casual tone. "Mom, do you really need to stress so much? It's a vacation, just enjoy it." I looked up and met his eyes. "I've stressed my whole life to raise you, and I will keep stressing, but this time, for myself." The table went dead quiet. No one said anything else. That night, Madison and I sat together on the balcony. She looked at me, eyes shining. "Grandma, I've never seen you this strong." I smiled and took her hand. "I've always had strength. I just hadn't used it before." We sat quietly, listening to the steady waves. In my heart, a plan was clearer than ever. They thought I was a blurry shadow in this family, but they would soon see the person steering this trip was me. I added to my notebook journal, Day 4 control addendum signed, test successful. "They're starting to panic. Madison is on my side. The game will hit its peak soon." I closed the notebook and lifted my eyes to the night sky. The thin moonlight washed over the sea, but inside me, the light was much stronger. I knew this battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. I had prepared for that morning days in advance. In my notebook, I had circled 10 in big red ink, a reminder to myself. That moment would be the turning point. Around 9 a.m., I got up early, brewed a black coffee, and sat on the balcony overlooking the pool. Down below, my family had already gathered. Paige was stretched out on a lounger, Lila was busy taking photos, and Aaron and Caleb were splashing around with the kids. I watched them all, my heart dipping, then surging with resolve. They thought I was invisible, but in just minutes everything would flip. At about 9:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Victor Alvarez, the hotel manager. "Mrs. Mercer, the system is ready. We'll deactivate the cards. Right at 10 a.m. I set the phone on the table and took a deep breath. The minute hand ticked forward. I could hear my heartbeat sinking with the waves. Then at exactly 10 a.m., everything unfolded like a scene cued by a director. At the pool, Paige stood up and tapped her room key at the glass door into the lobby. A beep sounded. The light flashed red. She tried again, same error tone. I watched her face shift from surprise to a scowl. Lila stepped up and tried her key. Nothing. Only that cold red light. Within minutes, the whole group was buzzing. Caleb frowned, and Aaron snapped, "Maybe the system's down." "Come on, let's go ask the front desk." I gave a thin smile, sipped my coffee, and kept observing from a distance. At exactly 10:15 a.m., my phone rang. "Aaron, I waited a few seconds before answering. "Mom, the room keys don't work. Come down and help us fix this now." I leaned back in my chair, voice steady. "I'm busy, son. You can ask the front desk." I hung up before Aaron could say more. Around 10:45 a.m. Victor texted, "I've explained it clearly." The cards were deactivated at the request of the booking holder. They seemed surprised. I read it with my heart pounding, but this time from a sharp, undeniable satisfaction. At exactly 10:58 a.m., Caleb called, his voice tight, straining for calm. "Mom, did you cancel our rooms?" I answered slowly. "Yes." A dead silence came over the line. Then Caleb stammered, "Why?" I lifted my head, looked straight out at the blue sea, and said, "Because I have the right." I set the phone down, oddly light. The hands that used to shake now calmly poured more coffee. I wasn't afraid anymore. At 11 a.m., Madison texted, "Grandma, they're talking about coming up to your room." I smiled and arranged the folder I'd prepared. Contract, addendum, notarized statement, printed chat logs. I'd even printed 4 sets, one for each of them. I wanted a confrontation, I'd let the truth do the talking. Around 11:20 a.m., I heard urgent knocking. Aaron, Caleb, Paige, and Lila rushed in, faces twisted by anger, shame, and panic. Paige shouted, "Mom, what did you do? How could you cancel our rooms?" I didn't answer right away. I invited them to sit on the sofa and calmly slid a folder to each of them. On top were printed messages from their no-drama getaway group. They grabbed them and skimmed the lines: free vacation, have mom pay first, charge back at the end. The air in the room froze. Aaron stammered, This was just a joke." I held his gaze, my tone even and razor sharp. "A joke? You call turning me into a wallet a joke? You thought I didn't know? I've known since day one." Caleb rubbed his forehead, trying to avoid my eyes. Paige and Lila glanced at each other, faces flushed. I placed my hand on the contract addendum and spoke clearly. "You plan to make this trip free, but every room is in my name. I locked them. From now on, you're responsible for yourselves." Silence. "Only the clock ticking," I continued. "If you choose to shout, threaten, or insult, I'll call security. If you want to challenge the law, I'll present this notarized statement in court. But if you truly want to make it right, start by paying for your own vacation." I stood and stepped onto the balcony. The noon sun made the sea glitter, each wave slapping in agreement. Behind me, I heard Aaron sigh and Caleb mutter something to Paige. Without turning back, I said one last thing. "I've lived my whole life preserving the peace. Today I live to preserve myself." I heard chairs scrape and heavy footsteps. Then the door closed. The room was quiet again. My hands trembled slightly, but my heart no longer felt heavy. Madison came in afterward, eyes bright. She hugged me tightly and whispered, "You did it. I'm proud of you." I smiled and kissed her hair. "We're only getting started, sweetheart. This game has many rounds." I looked at the clock. The minute hand had slid past the 12. A new chapter had opened, one where, for the first time in years, I wasn't reactive. I was in control. The next morning, Florida's sky was crystal clear, the early sun flashing across the rolling blue. I woke very early, sat at the wooden desk, and organized all the documents, printed messages, invoices, and contract addenda. I clipped each sheet into slim folders and stacked them neatly. I wanted everything crystal clear, because I knew what was coming. My family would come to confront me, and this time I wouldn't hide. Around 9 a.m., the phone rang. Victor, the hotel manager, said the small conference room on the 9th floor room. 9:03, was ready for the internal discussion I'd requested last night. I thanked him. Before hanging up, he added, "Mrs. Mercer, security will stand outside at a respectful distance. No one will intervene unless needed, but you can feel safe." I put on a modest navy dress, the one I'd planned for a family dinner they never invited me to. Instead of tears, I wanted them to see composure. I clasped a classic pearl necklace, picked up my briefcase, and walked out with Madison. She held my hand tight, her eyes bright with resolve. The ninth-floor hallway was quiet. Room 903 stood slightly ajar. Inside, a long table, 8 chairs, a water carafe, and hot coffee were set out. I sat at the head, placed my folder in front of me, and Madison took the seat beside me. The door closed, and only the soft hum of the AC remained. I waited. 15 minutes later, quick footsteps pounded closer. The door flew open. Aaron came first, scowling. Caleb followed, eyes red from a sleepless night or anger. Paige and Lila pulled out chairs and sat, not bothering to hide their irritation. I greeted them quietly, but no one replied. The air was heavy as lead. I began, "You wanted to talk? This is the right time." Aaron slammed his hand on the table. "Mom, what was yesterday? Do you realize how embarrassed we were?" People looked at us like scammers. I kept my voice even, not like, "You actually planned a scam." Caleb started to rise, but Paige tugged him back. I reached for the folder, flipped to a few printed chat pages, and slid them their way. Paper rustled. The black text was clear. "Free vacation, charge back at the end." Each line cut the air like a blade. Lila flushed and tried to deflect. "Mom, we were just joking." "You misunderstood." I looked straight at her, my voice dropping. "A joke? Then why did Caleb call the bank to start a dispute?" Madison heard everything. The room froze. Madison nodded, her gaze steady. Caleb choked on his words, mouth opening and closing with nothing to say. I went on, crisp as an indictment. "You invited me to put everything under my name. I sold my wedding ring and saved for 8 months to pay the deposit. You promised to split it, but in your private group you planned to cut me out, called me a burden, and intended to leave me with the bill when you walked away. Tell me, what have I done over all these years to deserve that?" No one answered. Only the clock hand moved. I opened another folder and pulled out the document I'd had notarized last night, a statement confirming I voluntarily paid all costs and that none of you has any right to dispute them. I set it down hard, and everyone flinched. "This is the evidence. The bank has noted it. The hotel system is updated. Even if you try to argue, the law will not be on your side." Paige burst into tears, but not from remorse. Her tears were just a thin shell hiding humiliation. Lila stared at the table, her hands shaking but clamped around her phone, hunting for an exit. Aaron made one last attempt. "Mom, we were wrong, but you have to understand times are tough. We just wanted to save money." I let out a faint laugh, but it tasted bitter. "Save money by cheapening your mother's trust? Do you have any idea what it took for me to put away every dollar? Were any of you there on the nights I shivered in a cold house because I turned off the heat to save a little, or watched me huddle over a thin bowl of soup just to scrape together a few more bucks?" Aaron said nothing. Madison squeezed my hand tighter, her eyes bright with anger. I stood, letting my gaze pass over each face. "Yesterday, when your keycards died, you panicked about losing a place to sleep. That feeling being left behind, treated like leftovers, I've tasted it for years. Today, you only got a small sample." The room went silent. Then I ended with a declaration. "From now on, I am nobody's wallet. You have 2 choices. Pay for your own rooms if you want to stay, or leave right now. Madison and I are staying to enjoy the vacation I paid for. Everything else is no longer my concern." No one argued. They knew every exit had closed. I gathered the papers and put them in my case. Before leaving, I paused, looked at their stunned faces, and quietly said, "You called this the no-drama getaway. You turned it into a tragedy. And I turned it into justice." I took Madison's hand and stepped into the sunlit hallway. Outside, security stood by and gave a small nod. I drew a long breath, feeling lighter. In my heart, I knew this hearing wasn't just a confrontation in room 903. It was a statement. From now on, I will not be dismissed. When the door to room 903 closed behind me, a quiet emptiness spread out. I held Madison's hand, feeling her pulse race. She said nothing, just walked beside me. The hallway blazed with sunlight from the window at the end, and that light made everything clearer than ever. I had taken a step I couldn't undo, and Madison had just become my only ally. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor, where there was a small, quiet lounge. I chose a table by the window and ordered 2 mint teas. Madison sat across from me, studying me for a long time as if trying to read what I hadn't said. Finally, she spoke. "Grandma, today, you felt like a completely different person. I've never seen you this strong." I gave a thin smile, my lips a little unsteady. "It's not that I changed, Madison. I just stopped enduring." She went quiet, tracing the handle of her teacup. I could tell she wanted to say more, so I waited. At last, she drew a breath. "I've known that secret for a long time, Grandma. They have a group chat. They added me to keep an eye on you." But the more I read, the more ashamed I felt. "I was going to tell you, but I was scared." Her voice caught. I reached across and took her hand. "You were braver than anyone by choosing to stand with me. There's a line between them and me you've chosen. Don't blame yourself." Her eyes brimmed. "But they're my parents. I don't want to betray them, and I can't close my eyes either. When I saw you put down the evidence yesterday, I realized the truth matters more. You matter more." My throat tightened at that. For years I'd waited for recognition like this, not from my own children, but from a granddaughter who seemed small yet saw more clearly than anyone. I whispered, "Madison, you drew a line. They're on that side, you and I are on this side. That isn't division, it's protection. Sometimes, to preserve what's right, we have to stand opposite the people we love." She nodded, her gaze steadier. She told me that all last night, listening to her parents argue in their room, she decided she would not let them keep turning me into a faint shadow in my own life. In that moment, I saw how much she'd grown. She wasn't just a kid pulled into family conflict, she was a witness, an ally. The tea cooled, but our conversation didn't. I told Madison about my life, years scrimping, simple dinners, so my children could have the best. I spoke about my late husband and the wedding ring I sold to put down the hotel deposit. Madison listened, her eyes shining with a kind of empathy no one else in the family had ever shown me. "Grandma, I promise I'll never forget what you've done, and I won't let anyone treat you like a burden again," she said, voice trembling but sure. I smiled, a calm rising in me. Near noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. "Mom, we want to meet privately to work this out. Please don't take this further." I set the phone down without replying. Madison looked at me and asked softly, "What will you do?" I answered quietly, "I'll let them cross the line they drew. If they're truly sorry, they'll find a way to make things right. If not, we lose nothing." We decided to spend the rest of the morning on the beach. Madison ran barefoot on the sand, the wind lifting her long brown hair. I watched her, feeling suddenly lighter. It had been so many years since I'd smiled like that, not the forced kind hiding sadness, but a real one. On the beach, I told Madison a small story. When I was her age, I wanted to be an English teacher, but I dropped the dream to work and support my family. I said that if I regret anything, it's putting myself on the margins for too long. Madison hugged me and whispered, "You're not on the margins anymore, Grandma. You're at the center, at least for me." Those words meant more to me than any apology from my sons or daughters-in-law. By late afternoon, we went back to the room. On the table was a small note from the front desk. Caleb had left a message asking to meet that evening. I looked at Madison. She shrugged. "It's your call, but I'll be with you, no matter what." I slipped the note into my folder without answering. The line had been drawn. Betrayal on one side, honesty on the other. Madison had chosen to stand with me, and for the first time in my life, I knew I wasn't alone. That night, sitting on the balcony, I murmured to Madison, "You helped me see that justice sometimes begins with a young person's choice. You chose, and so did I. From now on, we go together." She smiled and rested her head on my shoulder. The surf pounded, the sea air tasted salty, and I realized strength doesn't always come from age or experience. Sometimes it comes from the courage to step across a line. Madison drew that line, and I'm ready to walk it with her, storms or not. That morning I woke earlier than usual. Seabright Palms was blazing with sun, the first rays slipping through the curtains and painting golden bands across the blue carpet. Madison was still asleep, her face peaceful, her brows twitching with a dream. I looked at her, full of feeling. I had found support, but I also knew I had to stand on my own. I opened my suitcase and folded my clothes neatly. For the first time in years, I packed without panic or fear. I wasn't running from anyone, wasn't rushing to dodge, yelling, or contempt. I was simply leaving because I wanted to. In the mirror, I saw an older woman with silver hair, wrinkles, and clear eyes. I told myself, "Evelyn, you're not fleeing. You're stepping out to own your life." Around 8 a.m., my phone pinged. A text from Caleb. "Mom, please don't go. We can talk again. Don't let the family fall apart." I read it and didn't respond. Late apologies, if they come at all, can't erase years of treating me like a burden. I wrote a few brief lines to leave behind for them. "I'm not running. I just won't accept being disrespected anymore. From now on, I'll take my own path. If you truly want to find me, do it with respect, not by using me." I set the note on the wooden table in room 903, where arguments had flown yesterday. It was a quiet, clear declaration, no more debate. As I rolled my suitcase out, Madison hurried over, hair tousled, sleep, still clinging to her eyes. "Grandma, you're really going?" I smiled and patted her head. "Yes, but not to run away, sweetheart. I'm just choosing a different direction." She pressed her lips together, then blurted, "I'm coming with you." We went down to the front desk together. Victor Alvarez was waiting. He handed me the final bill, everything in my name. When I signed the last line, my hand didn't shake like before. I felt it clearly. This wasn't just a payment, it was a signature of freedom. Victor looked at me, voice sincere. "Mrs. Mercer, I've seen many families and many stories. Few people walk away with your composure. I wish you the very best." I nodded with a small smile. "Thank you. At last I know how not to bow my head." We left the hotel. Outside, sunlight poured across the stone path. A taxi pulled up. The driver opened the door with a friendly smile. I set my suitcase in the trunk and turned for one last look. Seabright Palms sparkled in the morning light, but to me it was no longer a place of humiliation. It was where I took back control. Madison sat beside me in the car, her hand resting lightly on mine. She didn't speak, but I understood. We were moving forward without looking back. On the road, I watched the palms tilt their shadows across the shoulder. I remembered all the times I'd left houses and rooms with a bitter taste. I always thought I was running. Today I knew the difference. Leaving because you're forced is defeat. Leaving because you choose to is victory. I turned to Madison. "You know, I used to think my life would end quietly in endurance and compliance. But now I believe that even when we're older, we can still write a new chapter." Madison smiled, eyes shining. "You're writing it now, and I'll read it with you." We reached a small nearby airport. I bought tickets to Boston, where I'd lived when I was young. I wanted to return to the little house in the suburbs, the one that once rang with laughter from me and my husband. I'd kept it, quietly paying taxes and upkeep. Never had that decision felt so right. While we waited to board, I wrote in my journal, Day 7, leaving Seabright Palms. No tears, no fear. I'm leaving, not running, taking the steps of someone who knows she deserves better. Madison is beside me. A new road is waiting. I closed the notebook and breathed deep. The PA announced our flight was ready for takeoff. On board, I took the window seat. As the plane lifted and the blue water shrank below, I felt a massive weight drop from my shoulders. I was no longer tied to a toxic cord. I'd cut it clean. Madison rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Grandma, let's start over." I smiled and squeezed her small hand. Yes, starting today. The sky opened wide ahead of us, white clouds stretching like an endless carpet. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but at least I'd chosen to take it. And that choice, for me, was freedom. I left not to run away. I left to find myself. Our flight to Boston landed in the late afternoon. The air felt nothing like Florida. Colder, drier, but familiar in my memory. Stepping out of the airport, I took a long breath and felt the city that once held my youth. A taxi took us to the little house in Newton I'd quietly kept all these years, a red brick place with a brown tiled roof and a few mossy streaks along the steps. I opened the door, the hinge sighed, and the warm smell of wood rolled out. Everything was still there. The oak set. My husband and I picked. Our wedding photo on the wall, the old clock ticking away. Madison walked in, eyes lighting up. "It's beautiful, Grandma. I had no idea you kept everything." I smiled. "This isn't just a house. It's where I dreamed, loved, and held on to hope. And now, it's where I'll begin again." That night, we sat in the living room, the fireplace washing the room in soft light. Madison leaned on my shoulder while I listened to the crackle of the wood. I realized happiness doesn't need luxury. Sometimes it's simply sitting in your own home beside someone who truly sees and loves you. The next day, I started cleaning, dusting the shelves, wiping the windows. Madison helped, quick hands and bright energy. Her laughter ran through the old house and brought it back to life. Watching her, my chest filled. I may have lost a lot in this life, but I kept what mattered most, the passing on of honesty and love. In the days that followed, I wrote everything that happened into a thick notebook. Not to complain, but to remember. I had been belittled and used, and I stood up, leaving with my head high. I believe one day Madison will read these pages and understand that courage sometimes arrives late, but never too late. On the weekend, we sat on the porch watching warm lights glow from the houses up and down the street. The night air was sharp, but my heart was warm. Madison asked softly, "Do you regret it?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart. I didn't run. I left to keep my dignity. And that's something I hadn't done in years." I looked up at the starry sky and thought of my children. I don't know if they're sorry or if they understand, but that no longer defines me. I drew a line for myself, and I crossed it. I know some will call me selfish, say a mother should be endlessly forgiving, but forgiveness doesn't mean erasing yourself. Forgiveness has value only when it rests on respect. And when respect is gone, leaving is the last way to love yourself. Madison squeezed my hand and whispered, "Grandma, I believe things will be better from now on." I smiled, feeling lighter. Yes, from here on out we'll write a new chapter. No lies, no using people, only truth and love. I closed my eyes and listened to the wind through the trees. In that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. I left, but not in shame. I left as a woman who finally chose herself. And now, as I tell this story, I want to leave a note for anyone listening. We think it's too late to change, sometimes. But if you can still stand up and step forward, it is never too late. I, an older woman with silver hair, found freedom in what I thought were the last days of my life. If I can do it, anyone can. Thank you for staying with me to the very end of this story. Where are you listening from? What city do you call home? Please share in the comments. If this story touched you, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe so we can keep traveling together through the next chapters. Your support gives strength not only to me, but to anyone who needs the reminder that they deserve respect, love, and a life that belongs to them.